Section 14 of Essays on Art. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Hope Force 1. Essays on Art by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Translated by Samuel Gray Ward. Section 14. Letter 5. The freedom of your answer assures me that you have taken my letter with the greatest good humor, and that this choice gift of heaven in you has nowise been disturbed. Your sheets were to me a propitious gift, and in a propitious moment. If good luck comes oftener alone, and more seldom in company than ill, I am, at any rate, just now, an exception to the rule. Your letter could never have found a more acceptable or more significant moment, and your remarks upon my odd classification could not have borne fruit more speedily than at the very moment when, like a bursting seed, it fell into a fruitful soil. Let me now relate to you what took place here yesterday, that you may learn how a new star has arisen in my horizon, with which your letter of yesterday came so happily into conjunction. Yesterday, a stranger made his appearance, whose name I was already familiar with, and who has the reputation of a skilful connoisseur. I was pleased to see him, made him acquainted generally with my possessions, let him choose what he would, which I exhibited to him. I soon noticed his cultivated eye for works of art, and especially for their history. He knew the masters as well as the scholars. In cases of doubtful works, he was familiar with the grounds of uncertainty, and his conversation was highly interesting to me. Perhaps I should have been hurried on to open myself in a more lively manner towards him, had not my role of listener to my guest made me from the first take a more quiet tone. His judgment in many cases agreed with mine. In many I was forced to admire his sharp and practised eye. The first thing that I differed from was his unmitigated hatred of all mannerists. I was in pain for some of my favorite pictures, and was curious to discover from what source such a rejection could spring. My guest had been late in his arrival, and the twilight prevented our further examination. I gave him a little collation, to which our philosopher was invited, for this latter had lately drawn nearer to me. How it came about I must tell you in passing. Fortunately, heaven, foreseeing the peculiarities of men, has provided a means that as often binds us together as separates us. My philosopher is taken with the grace of Julia, whom he left as a child. His right feeling engages him to make himself acceptable to uncle as well as niece, and our discourse usually turns upon the inclinations and passions of mankind. Before we were all assembled, I seized an opportunity to lend a helping hand to my poor mannerists against the stranger. I spoke of their beautiful nature, their happy handling, their agreeableness, adding, to keep myself safe, thus much I say only to claim for them a certain degree of forbearance, though I admit that high beauty, which is the highest end and aim of art, is in fact quite a different thing. He replied, with a smile that did not altogether please me, inasmuch as it seemed to express an overweening self-satisfaction, and a sort of compassion for me. Are you then stanch in the old-fashioned principle, that beauty is the last aim of art? I answered that I was not aware of any higher. Can you tell me what beauty is? He exclaimed. Perhaps not, I replied, but I can show it to you. Let us go and see. Even by candlelight, a fine cast of the Apollo, or a beautiful marble bust of Bacchus that I possess, and try if we cannot agree that they are beautiful. Before we go upon this quest, said he, it would be necessary for us to examine more closely this word beauty and its derivation. Beauty, Schönheit, comes from show, shine. It is an appearance, and not worthy to be the object of art. The perfectly characteristic only deserves to be called beauty. Without character there is no beauty. Surprised by this mode of expression, I replied, granted, so it be not proved, that beauty must be characteristic. Yet from this it only follows, that character lies at the root of beauty, but by no means that beauty and character are the same. Character holds to the beautiful the same relation that the skeleton does to the living man. No one will deny that the osseous system is the foundation of all highly organized forms. It consolidates and defines the form, but it is not the form itself. Still less does it bring about at last appearance, which, as the veil and integument of an organized whole, we call beauty. I cannot embark in similitude, said my guest, and from your own words, moreover, it is evident that beauty is something incomprehensible, or the operation of something incomprehensible. What cannot be comprehended is not. What we cannot make clear by words is nonsense. Ay, can you then clearly express in words the effect that a colored body produces on your eyes? He. That is again a metaphor that I will not be drawn into. It is enough that character can be indicated. You find no beauty without it, else it would be empty and insignificant. All the beauty of the ancients is only character, and only out of this quality is beauty developed. End of section 14. Recording by Hopeforce 1. Section 15 of Essays on Art. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Hopeforce 1. Essays on Art by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Translated by Samuel Gray Ward. Section 15. Our philosopher had arrived meanwhile, and was conversing with my nieces, when, hearing us speak earnestly, he stepped forward, and the stranger, encouraged by the accession of a new hearer, proceeded. That is just a misfortune, when good heads, when people of merit, get hold of such false principles, which have only a seeming of truth, and spread them wider and wider. None appropriate them so willingly as those who know and understand nothing of the subject. Thus has Lessing fastened upon us the principle that the antique alone cultivates the beautiful. Thus has Winckelmann put us to sleep with his still greatness of simplicity and repose, whereas the art of the ancients appear in all imaginable forms. But these gentlemen tarry by Jupiter and Juno, Jenny and Graces, and hide the ignoble forms and skulls of barbarians, the rough hair, foul beard, gaunt bones, and wrinkled skin of deformed age, the protruding veins and hanging breasts. In the name of God, I exclaimed, are there then independent, self-existing works of the best age of ancient art that exhibit such frightful objects? Or are they not rather subordinate works, occasional pieces, creations of an art that must demean itself according to outward circumstances, an art on the decline? He. I give you the specification, you can yourself search and judge, but you will not deny that the Laocoon, that Niobe, that Dirk, with her stepsons, are self-subsistent works of art. Stand before the Laocoon, and contemplate nature in full revolt and desperation. The last choking pang, the desperate struggle, the maddening convulsion, the working of the corroding poison, the vehement fermenting, the stagnating circulation, suffocating pressure, and paralytic death. The philosopher seemed to look at me with astonishment, and I answered, "We shudder, we are horrified at the bare description. In sooth, if it be so with the group of Laocoon, what are we to say of the pleasure we find in this as in every other true work of art? But I will not meddle in the question. You must settle it with the authors of the Propylum, who are of just the opposite mind." "It must be admitted," said my guest, "that all antiquity speaks for me, for where do horror and death rage more hideously than in the representation of the Niobe?" I was confounded by this assertion, for only a short time before I had been looking at the copper plates in Fabroni, which I immediately brought forward and opened. I find no trace in the statues of raging horror and death, but rather the greatest subordination of tragical situation under the highest ideas of dignity, nobleness, beauty, and simplicity. I trace everywhere the artistic purpose to dispose the limbs agreeably and gracefully. The character is expressed only in the most general lines, that run through the work like a sort of ideal skeleton. Let us turn to the bas reliefs, which we shall find at the end of the book. We open to them. Of anything horrible, to speak truly, I see no trace here neither. Where is this rage of horror and death? I see figures so artfully interwoven, so happily placed against or extended upon each other, that while they remind me of a mournful destiny, they give room at the same time for the most charming imaginations. All that is characteristic is tempered. The violent is elevated, and I might say that character lies at the foundation. Upon it rests simplicity and dignity. The highest aim of art is beauty, and its last effect the feeling of pleasure. The agreeable, which may not be immediately united with the characteristic, comes remarkably before our eyes in these sarcophagi. Are not the dead sons and daughters of Niobe here made use of as ornaments? This is the highest luxury of art. She adorns no longer with flowers and fruits, but with the corpses of men, with the greatest misfortune that can befall a father or mother, to see a blooming family all at once snatched away. Yes, the beauteous genius who stands beside the grave, his torch reversed, has stood beside the artist as he invented and perfected, and over his earthly greatness has breathed a heavenly grace. My guest looked at me with a smile, and shrugged his shoulders. "Alas," said he, as I concluded, "alas, I see plainly that we can never come together. What a pity that a man of your acquirements, of your sense, will not perceive that these are all empty words, that to a man of understanding, beauty and ideal must always be a dream, which he cannot translate into reality, but finds to be in direct opposition to it." My philosopher appeared during the latter part of our conversation to be getting uneasy, for as passive and indifferent as he had appeared at the commencement, he moved his chair, twice moved his lips, and when a pause occurred, began to speak. But what he said he shall himself repeat to you. He is here again this morning, for his share in our yesterday's conversation has broken the husk of our mutual mistrust, and two fair plants have become visible in the garden of friendship. The post goes out this morning, whereby I dispatch the present sheets, which have been the cause of my neglecting several of my patients. For this I should look for pardon at the hand of Apollo, the god who concerns himself alike for physicians and artists. This afternoon we have further some singular scenes to expect. Our characteristic is to come back again, and half a dozen strangers more have announced themselves. The weather is charming and everything is in motion. In relation to the expected company, we have made an agreement, Julia, the philosopher, and I, that we will let no one of their peculiarities escape us. Yet you shall first have the result of our yesterday's disputation, and receive only the warmest adieus from your hurried but always faithful friend and servant. End of section 15. Recording by Hope Force 1.